Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Bank on Social session. I'm Andrew Swinney, your host, and our guest today is Seth Bridges. He is the co-founder and head of product for Rival IQ. I'm going to take a little opportunity right now to fanboy out. As a social media manager and someone who has been one for several years, I'd say probably about 30% of my time is wondering what I should be doing. 30% of that time is spent checking to see if it actually worked, and then the rest of the time is spent cursing the algorithms because it didn't work. The answer to all those questions really lies in data, which is why I was so excited to have Seth on last year. And his presentation really kind of showed me how and why these algorithms and platforms work the way they do, who's doing things well, and what lessons they can teach me. So I've been really excited about this session. I can't wait. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to you. So everyone, please say hello to Seth.
Thank you, Andrew. Very, very kind. And I'm really happy to be here today. As Andrew mentioned, I do own product for Rival IQ. We're a social media analytics tool. But that isn't really that relevant today. What is relevant is my background really is coming from a combination of marketing and kind of data science and data analysis. And it's really just a fantastic opportunity to be able to take some time to dig in to some of the analytics around community banking, credit unions, and to understand a little bit more about where data can point us toward opportunities for improvement in our marketing. So fortunate for me, I get to have a singular focus in my life these days as just a product owner. I get to speak with social media managers, digital marketing managers at agencies, brands, banks, higher ed, you name it. They all have slightly different challenges, but at the end of the day, we're all trying to reach our audience, figure out how to improve and make our marketing a little bit better. I, for better or worse, owned marketing here for a number of years, not recently, thankfully, because focus is good. But during that time, what I learned more than anything else is that data and benchmarking was really the easiest and best way for me to understand how I could improve our marketing. Benchmarking, though, isn't about who's winning and who's losing. I mean, well, I think a lot of people think that when I say the word benchmarking. Rather, benchmarking for me is about finding examples of the best marketing and then using those examples to understand where are my deficiencies, where are my gaps. Again, I don't need to win. I want to win with my customers, but I definitely am hitting a target market that is very similar with a lot of other, say, marketing automation or marketing tools. We don't compete. There are good players that have much bigger and more well-funded marketing teams that I can learn from because, like, let's be honest, I got a PhD in computer science. I've become a marketer through 10 years of starting businesses, not because I went to school to understand marketing. So leaning on data, definitely, maybe my crutch, maybe my hammer. But today, I really hope to be able to spend the time I have with you talking about the marketing you're doing today, using data to really identify what we can call perfect marketing for you, and then be able to say the gap in the middle we can close. That's opportunity. Anything that we can do that we can learn from data to look and figure out how do we get closer to what is perfect marketing for me, we're going to be better off. So this wouldn't be very much fun for you if I used a bunch of examples from businesses that are not in the financial services industry or community banking or credit unions. So rather than give you some generic analysis of, I don't know, the marketing of MailChimp or something like that, I actually went and we built up a landscape of about 45 to 50 community banks, credit unions, small and large. Here are just some of the icons, some of the logos for the brands and the banks that we'll be analyzing today. It's not all of them, but it's a pretty good representative set. There's some from here. I'm in Seattle, so we've got like BECU up there. There's some larger, Washington Federal, I guess. There's some from my hometown because like I'm just like that. Bayport, for example, from Virginia. And then we've got a couple customers up here, like Alliant is a customer of ours. Wish they were all customers, but one day at a time. So when I dig into the data from this set of companies, the first thing that I always want to do is just understand where the networks that are being focused on by these banks, and where are their audience, where are their followers. Here is kind of a picture of the average following that all of these banks have on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, etc. And maybe not surprisingly, the largest following, more than 75% of the average company in this landscape has their Facebook following as their biggest following, Twitter next, then a little bit of Instagram. And that's maybe not surprising. Pretty much everyone is on Facebook. Demographically, depending on your target audience, you might have more on Instagram. Like when we look at things like beauty, fashion, et cetera, like Instagram, very Instagram heavy, younger demographic. Obviously, banking serves the entire community. So figuring out ways to be in touch with all of our community members is an important thing. But where they are now isn't necessarily the only important thing. The other thing I wanted to dig in and look at was, how is the growth? So for kind of my time with you, the analysis that I did was the last 6 months, looking roughly from March 1st through the end of August. So about 6 months worth of data to be able to dig in and understand. And during that time, the average bank grew their Facebook following about 6%. So again, an average following of about 68,000. There's definitely some really large folks in here, like a Navy Federal, over 1 million Facebook followers, all the way down to some of the smaller ones. Instagram, 25% audience growth during the same time period, but on a much smaller magnitude. You see here only about 2,500, 3,000 followers there. So as I was digging in, I wanted to understand a little bit more about the Facebook growth. Last year, Andrew, when he invited me to kind of come here and talk, we talked about Facebook again, because I think it's most relevant for many of you on the line right now, because it is the best place for you to focus and kind of reach a breadth of your audience in one go. But I wanted to look at the audience growth piece a little bit more, because I saw a lot of banks with much larger growth than that. So here's just a picture of the ton of top 8 audience growth banks from this data set. So BECU over 19%, Suncoast Credit 17%, some double-digit growth over that time period. Notice the little spark lines. I wanted to look at the trend of how some of these folks were growing. So this is, I think, BECU on the top and Washington State Employees Credit Union here at the bottom. Look at those elbows in the curve. You get organic growth, and then you have what is clearly a follower campaign. When you see a change with steady upward growth that's at a dramatically higher rate than average, that is almost certainly a paid follower campaign. If ever you're in a situation where you're having to explain to a boss, a CMO, VP marketing, whatever, like why is this happening here and not for us, for example, this kind of long-term trend data really can be incredibly insightful for us to be able to dig in and understand, like, oh, look at that audience campaign. Like you see BCU, flat, not flat, but slow, steady organic growth, then 2 different kind of regimes of increased acceleration in audience growth. And then again, back to that kind of slow and gradual growth. They paid, for better or worse, for that increase in their audience. And that's why we see it stack up. So there's a summary number doesn't always just tell us the answer. It shows us, though, that you definitely can make an impact there. Where you want to go next is always to dig in and understand, are they seeing increased engagement as a result, decreased engagement, et cetera? I'm going to park that for a second, but I want to go back and do a little bit more comparison for this set of banks. Again, looking at if their audience on Facebook, are they spending their time posting on Facebook? Are they spending time making sure to post enough to stay relevant, et cetera? And we see about 0.85 posts a day. That's about every weekday on Facebook, and Twitter a little bit more than once a day. Instagram is the next closest, and it's only about once every 5 days on average across all these banks. But that's really driven down by the fact that only 50% of the banks that I looked at for this analysis are even publishing on Instagram at all. About 15 of the 30 that I'm including in this set, 0 posts in the last 6 months. The other set ranging widely from a post a day kind of on downward. So because of both where your audience is, where the growth is, and where the activity levels are, I decided it was going to be a best use of our time today to continue to focus a little bit on Facebook, because again, I think there's still lots of room to grow, particularly as you think about different demographics, either still kind of coming online with respect to Facebook or changing how they use it. Facebook continually evolving the algorithm and understanding what can drive success there is still very relevant. I think there's still an incredible amount of impact we can have with our Facebook marketing. And so when I dive in and tell people the ways that I think that they can use data to find that opportunity for improvement, there's 3 segments that I want to dig into. And the first is, for the platforms you're working on, do you know the rules? Do you understand how these algorithms work? Do you understand all of the impacts that are a result of choices you make, say about how quickly to respond to wall posts or messages to your brand on Facebook, and how that affects, for example, what we see in our sidebars of how you respond in minutes, you respond in an hour, or no information about how quickly you respond because perhaps you don't respond. So understanding the rules, then we'll move on to understanding how we can look at competitive data. So what other people are doing, what sorts to the top, to be able to find examples of things we'd either like to be doing or things we're doing, but others are just finding more success there. How can we tactically change some of the ways we execute these things, as well as maybe find new strategies that we weren't even thinking about. And then at the end, we're going to jump into talking about how our private data, our full end-to-end data, can really be the most impactful for us. So again, let's focus on Facebook and a little bit about how things work, what Facebook's going for, and how we can use that to our advantage if we have that awareness. So the number one thing I think for every social platform, this is not specific to Facebook, but we'll talk about Facebook here, is consistency. If you are not producing some amount of content consistently on Facebook, you will become irrelevant. Not every piece of content you post is necessarily going to resonate with every one of your customers, but certainly maintaining a consistent drumbeat of content to give the Facebook algorithm a chance to serve your content to the people who have continued to engage with it over time is going to be a way for you to stay relevant, to grow your organic reach, and if you're doing things that drive virality as well, your viral reach on Facebook, to get as much out of the platform as you can for free. So as I said, on average, about 0.85 posts a day. So that's about once per weekday, which maybe makes sense. This is a business that may or may not have typical service hours on the weekends. Of the 30 companies I looked at here, only about 9 were at that 1 post a day. So every 7 days a week having at least a post. You'll see some larger credit unions here, like a BCU or America First, like obviously a lot more marketing budget going behind these folks. Maybe not surprising, but that's not necessarily the case for every single bank that you see up here. Just to give you a little bit of context, we did a study of a number of industries last year: health and beauty, fashion, media. How much do they post a day? And across all industries, we see that the average is about 1.1 posts a day, so just slightly more than once a day. So this set of community banks and credit unions definitely posting more than our food and beverage brands, kind of right in there with fashion, health and beauty, in that on average about once a weekday. So there's no reason for alarm here. Like, everyone's aiming toward the right thing. If we look at the data for, again, this set of banks and line it up by day of week, it falls out just kind of how I said. Monday through Friday, we see about 1 post a day on average. Saturday and Sunday, it drops down to about a half a post. So that means that about half of the companies in this landscape, again, are posting on the weekends as well. Half are not. But just posting, like what are you posting? So for this set of 30-ish banks in the last 6 months, there were about 4,500 Facebook posts or so, maybe slightly more. Just staring at my numbers here. Photos, though, photos, whether or not there was a link in the copy or not, the actual medium being a photo, not a shared link, where your call to action, the big area in the post being a link, is about 60% of the content. Links, though, coming in next, where you're trying to drive traffic off-site, off of Facebook, about a third of the content. And then we've got just a long tail here of a little bit of native video, some pure status updates that have no accompanying media, very small number of event posts, etc. And the reason I bring this up is that the kind of media that you choose to post has very different implications with respect to the kind of reach that you're going to get organically from Facebook. Remember, Facebook doesn't want their users to leave Facebook. This is why we have things like native video. This is why we have things like instant articles. They make for a better user experience for the customer. They stay on Facebook longer, gives them that many more chances to serve that many more ads, to be kind of blunt about it. But there's nothing wrong with that, given how fantastic the targeting is these days. The ads I get, and probably the ads all of you get, are more and more relevant and often don't even feel that offensive. In fact, they're often quite helpful, particularly if you consider some of the retargeting scenarios that are happening. But if you're still trying to expand your reach and get the most you can, you have to understand that Facebook really wants you to post content that is not going to take people off the platform, and that's going to cause more people to engage with your content. So the average link post you throw out there might only end up getting to 1 or 2, 3% of your followers. The average photo might get 10x that, 5x that. The average native video, again, higher. The more that you post this photo content, this native video content, and the less you post links that are going to try to drive people off site, the more organic reach you're going to get for all of your content. And in that way, understanding both the mix of what you're doing and the frequency with which you're trying to, for example, drive virality or engagement or conversation on the platform, Facebook, versus taking them off to your site or a landing page or getting them to do some conversion off site, really can have a dramatic impact to the amount of reach and engagement you get on Facebook. So to that end, let's just talk about a mix, less from a media type perspective though, and just a little bit more about what kinds of content we can do. So here's an example where the bank, and I'm going to scooch in here, it's the State Employees Credit Union, had a school supplies wish list. They were doing a drive to collect materials for people who maybe couldn't afford them. And this post got a ton of shares, because again, community bank, much like higher ed, you have maybe a different resonance with your members than you do than your average, food brand does or something. And so to the extent, or say a nonprofit's also very similar, like very tight relationship with that audience. And so to the extent that these banks are trying to do something to either to help the community or help those in their community, often are able to very heavily leverage their audience on Facebook to do sharing on their behalf and to reach a dramatically larger number of people than they might have otherwise. They did not explicitly make a call in this post to say, please share this out. Just people want to help other people. Like, we are all generally good human beings, and they definitely saw the impact of here. Way more shares than likes. Like that almost never happens. Another thing that you should be thinking about is how are you actually trying to drive virality? So a little foreshadowing till later, but we definitely see lots of contests on Facebook here in this kind of set of banks. And that's because contests where you're having people comment or tag other folks serve to drive reach and serve to get your content and serve to get your branding in front of that many more people. And so here's an example from Community Choice Credit Union, where they're doing a chance to win some seats to a Neil Diamond concert. Like, lots of comments, and with every comment, you are going to pick up another 10, 20, 30 impressions that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten. Please note that both of these things keep people on the platform. They were trying to run the contest strictly by having people engage on Facebook, which then drives virality. And by virality, I don't mean like 100 million view viral. I just mean people engaging with your post, causing other people that would have not otherwise seen it, people who are not your customers, people who are not your fans, seeing it. Like, this is important. And at the end of the day, though, you're going to want to drive traffic, whether it's, again, for your business, or in this case, this example from Bayport Credit Union was doing a donation for all the folks impacted by Harvey, like Andrew down there in Houston. And so driving traffic off site, like, Facebook doesn't really want you to drive traffic off site, but they understand that that's part of doing business. And so to the extent that you're driving traffic, how can you make your headlines, your descriptions, the OG images that you choose to include as compelling as possible to get people to click through, but also leveraging some of the goodwill you've built up. Goodwill's maybe the wrong word, from Facebook, to be able to get more and more of that organic reach or more of that viral reach, so that when you do need to drive people off site, you're getting that content in front of as many people as possible. If you're only doing one of these things, it's probably fine to be in that center category, like just really driving a lot of engagement on platform, maybe more of a brand awareness play than anything else. If you're on the right side and you're always just trying to drive traffic to your site, like you're probably not getting very much out of your Facebook page and out of your Facebook audience. And I challenge you to go grab your Facebook Insights data and start to dig into where you're seeing organic reach. And I guarantee that as you start to experiment with other kinds of content whose purpose is not to just necessarily take people off Facebook, you're going to see the impact of those results. So again, learning the rules, understanding what the realm of the possible is, and then how to get the most out of the platform as we can. That's really how you're going to find the most success on Facebook. So backing away from the platform specifically and thinking a little bit more now about looking at what others are doing in this space. So I've just grabbed a set of 30 banks who have a Facebook audience of 5,000 followers or greater. Not everyone who I picked in this landscape kind of made that cut. My own personal bank, Verity Credit Union here in Seattle, didn't make the cut. So sad to not be able to use that as an example, but whatever. Maybe next year they'll have enough followers. One of the things I like to do when I analyze content competitively is go take all the posts for a particular time frame and sort them best to worst or most to least in a number of different ways. And a way that often is very revealing to me is to sort by the amount of comments or the amount of shares that content gets and see what falls out. What I'd like you to notice is on the left there's a very small amount of content that gets a dramatic amount of the engagement, or in this case, the commenting and sharing, and that there's sort of a long tail of content that doesn't really get that much commenting or sharing. This is how all things look when you stack them best to worst. Like a small number of things get a disproportionate amount of whatever it is, the purchases, the trial signups, the views. Like do this with your blog posts, do this with your ads, do this with anything. The shape is almost always the same. So when I grabbed all the words out of the post there from the left and threw them into a really cheesy word cloud, though useful for this particular scenario, what you see is the words that pop out: enter, winner, entry, comment, prize. Like, hey, these are most likely contests. So if I jump in and just show you a picture of some of the most commented on posts from this landscape in the last 6 months, just take a second and kind of take that in. I don't need any words, just the visuals here do enough to show you that these are contest posts. I didn't even filter down to those words now. I just used most commented as my kind of sort here. And look, not every one of these is a contest, but almost every one of these is a contest. And some of them are very, very clear about it. And some of them are not necessarily using kind of words over their graphics to call that out. But nevertheless, you see this here. If I jump and just pick one of the banks that does a lot of contests. So Gisa Credit Union, here's a screenshot of just their top most commented posts. Again, I did no filtering down to like words. I just used commenting as my measure here. Clearly, they understand what they're doing with contests by getting people to comment. Every comment gives them a chance to get reach from whoever did the commenting's network, whether or not they're mutual customers or mutual fans. And here, graphic design wise, like they're definitely very heavy with making sure that the imagery tells the story about the fact that this is a contest, rather than say making folks go read the copy. So if we look at all the other banks who are doing this, this is now me trying to filter down and find all the posts that are only about contests. So again, about 4,500 posts or so here. 10% or so were contest posts. And I sorted down to the list of the banks here that were doing a lot of this, like America First, BECU, Bethpage, One Nevada, Gisa. Like these folks are all doing lots of contests over the last 6 months. One thing to note, or to, I guess, ask if I were you, is like, how well do they do? Do they actually do a good job of driving engagement? And so when I segment these things out, the engagement rate for the contest posts about 0.23, which, again, compared to Instagram or something, is still a low rate. Has a lot to do more with the platform and the demographic. But when I compare that to non-contest posts, we see 0.04% engagement rate. It's about a 6x difference. And so, yes, on average, the contest posts that are being run by these banks and credit unions are dramatically more effective at creating on-platform engagement, therefore helping their organic reach quotient, therefore getting them more reach for free on Facebook, and the numbers are nothing to laugh at. Almost a 6x increase. So if I set a little bit of context for you back from our social engagement trend study, where we looked at a number of different industries. So here on the left, we've got a graph, how frequently these industries post per day, kind of on the x-axis there, and then vertically, what's the engagement rate look like? So media are outlier, like obviously media organizations posting a ton. Everyone else is, again, about that, one post per day. We'll take the contest post rate, 0.23. That's about middle of the road there on the left side. So, health and beauty and fashion's average post rates sitting a little bit north of 0.1. Higher ed has incredibly high engagement across all platforms. Their community is just so engaged. They're not really a business. You understand why that happens. But the contest posts for these exact set of credit unions and community banks that we're looking at, sit right in there, doing pretty well. The non-contest post, though, you notice would definitely be falling very, very low there on the graph. And so I'm not sitting here advocating and saying you should only be doing contest posts. Rather, other banks that are like you have found a way, or at least some of them have found a way, to make some of their Facebook audience incredibly more engaged, and probably gotten a lot more free reach out of it because of their choice to run contests on Facebook. So here's just I picked out one or two examples that I thought were fun. A 5-question series here from Bethpage Federal Credit Union. They were running a contest that basically had people answering trivia questions in the comments. And I saw some other Shark Week posts. And so I had to go and figure out okay, it was only 2 of you, but Bethpage and America First, definitely on the Shark, took advantage of the Shark Week thing. So now they're taking events that are happening in the world outside of banking and trying to make them a little bit more relevant, or again, create a contest that has some sort of temporal relevance to their audience. And each of them did 5 posts. 5 posts. So you notice the engagement rates on both of them are quite high. Just a reminder, there are rules from Facebook should you be choosing to run contests, or Instagram, whatever, about what they want you to do, say, not do, not say, etc. My disclaimer. But outside of contests, that's just one thing. What other things do we see as consistent patterns for driving success, for driving engagement, and for driving the kind of relationship that I think we want to have on social media with our customers and with our members, which is an actual relationship where we're sharing and we're treating each other as actual human beings, whether that's from a customer service perspective or just having shared experiences. And one thing I noticed from looking through here is that community is important, but often we express community through holidays. And so here's one from Alliant Credit Union where they asked the question. Questions often do very well if you can get your audience to read it and engage. And what's the smartest financial advice your mom ever gave you? #Mother's Day. The graphic, sweet, mom and daughter, ties in, makes sense. But let's go look at the comments. I'm gonna have to squint here for a second. My eyes are old. My parents took me to open my first bank account when I was 7. Oh, someone's telling a story about when their mom imparted some important financial advice they've carried with them for their whole life. Cool. The thing I want to point out, though, is that every one of these points that people came out, these are their customers, their audience, sharing stories. They're all very positive. And Alliant jumped in on every single one. And they had something to say that was positive. You get some emojis, lots of smiles. Whoever was running this was paying a lot of attention and definitely trying to create that back and forth engagement, which I think is so important. Again, community. Here's another example from BECU, where doing some members, or had some members who were doing fundraising work for Lifelong, an organization here in Seattle, sharing a bunch of pictures and just basically celebrating the community. And again, the comments, they're not all thank you BECU from Lifelong, who was mentioned in the post. Always mention the people you're working with. Well done, worthy. But the first comment, I wish BECU would surprise its members with Samsung Pay. Okay, thanks, but BECU on it, right? Somebody at least was paying attention and did the right thing, responded, acknowledged, and was able to at least share. In this particular case, it's coming soon. Thank you for hanging with us. Paying attention to your wall posts, paying attention to your comments is so important. Again, whether it's affirming the positivity or turning a potentially negative situation into something very positive for your customers, it's always an opportunity to win somebody's affection, potentially forever, even though it seems like a really small thing, responding to a comment on a Facebook page. People who could be your customers might be looking at those pages at some point and making a decision about who to do business with. This is public facing, and whether you've delegated your social media to your intern or not, it's visible to the world, and you want to do the best job that you can. So outside of competitive, where we get lots of rich data, I mean, we're able to look at what all of these different banks are doing, really dig into the kinds of things they're talking about, whether it's, again, contest, community, lots of banks celebrating achievements of their staff. Saw a lot of CEOs, VPs at a lot of these banks winning community awards. Definitely taking the opportunity to celebrate those things is a great amount. So a great amount we can learn from that kind of public competitive data. But when it gets down to it, the best data that you have access to is not public competitive data. It is your own data, right? Facebook Insights data, way deeper than anything you can get publicly from a platform like ours or anybody. Your own, say, Google Analytics or Omniture, whatever particular platform you use, looking at how customers move through your website, what content's really resonating. Search Console, how are you doing on SEO? Where are you winning in local search? Where are you not winning? All that data is private, and only you have access to it. So there might not be a competitive equivalent, but to the extent that we're doing things over and over and over again, and we have deep data on them, we can use that amount of rich data to understand what can we do better, what can we do worse. Here's a quick example from our own business. So we are a social media analytics business. We sell software to people probably a lot like you. And one of the ways that we get out there is from a content marketing perspective. We blog. We've been blogging. We're a 5-year-old business. We've probably written 500 or 600 blog posts. And I went and grabbed data for the last couple of months for our most trafficked blog posts, best to worst. Here's that same graph I showed you earlier about the most commented posts in your landscape. I have, two posts that are like way better than the rest. Then there's another 5 or 10 that get most of the traffic. And then there's a long tail of mediocrity. Like, that's not because we decided to phone it in on 90% of our blog posts. It's just that through some combination of resonance, topic, production, execution, how long it's been out there, who we got to share it, whatever, some stuff really rises to the top. I don't have this data for my competitors, but I do have this data for me. And the beautiful thing is that I know about how I got these people. I know about what they did on my site. And I know all the way down to, did they eventually, say, create a trial with me or engage with my sales team or buy? And that's the kind of data that lets me really understand. I don't care what blog posts get a lot of traffic. I care about what blog posts drive signups and drive product activation and drive sales engagement and drive purchasing, right? That's what drives my business. And so I can guarantee you that some of the posts that do that are there in the middle or, maybe slightly to the left. They're not necessarily my most traffic posts, but my most traffic posts are opportunities. If I can find ways to better retarget people that hit those top articles on Facebook, if I can find ways to insert meaningful, non-annoying calls to action in some of those posts that get people to move down my funnel and engage and learn with me more, that is an opportunity for me to find improvement, again, only by using data. That's all I've got. I can make that graph for you again, for page views, for actual trial signups, for dollars earned. It doesn't matter. Like, the result is going to be the same. But just to give you an insight here with respect to like why this is so important. So I go to the left. The blog post that's on the left for me is called How to Research Your Competitors' Social Media Strategy. Like, this is the core of what my business does. And this is a blog post that an agency partner wrote for us many years ago, and we just can kind of continue to retouch and update and kind of keep fresh with our product. But it is clearly the most resonant with people who find us and who end up liking our product because they had a need. This piece is very educational. It told them how to proceed with or without our product, but it piqued their interest or it scratched an itch. And at the end of the day, like, this is a weapon in our toolkit, understanding why this was great for us, using all that breadth of data that we have from top to bottom, really is creating opportunity. We now use this in a Facebook retargeting series. That's an instant article that can be shared on Facebook. Like all of this stuff goes together and really can have a dramatic impact on your business if you're able to take, again, that public data, the rules, the private data, bring it all together to take you, again, from today to where you could be and continue to improve your marketing with the same budget, with the same amount of effort, but just really directing where you go. So I'll leave you with sort of these three things that I think, as you spend time with data, as you spend time digging into these things, like people always ask, what should I be doing? The first thing for me is always realizing that there's not infinite time. I have 3 little kids. Like I have no time. Like I was telling Andrew, I don't even sleep. Prioritization is definitely the place where I pay the most attention. For me on social media, that's what channels do I need to be on? What channels can I not afford to be on? And really making peace with my decision for, a quarter at a time to go ahead and execute against that prioritization. Got to have goals. And they've got to be, again, they've got to be measurable. They've got to be attainable, because otherwise it's kind of depressing to work toward goals. And then as we continue to make progress toward the goals on the key priorities that we've set up, continually measuring how we're doing and how we've moved the needle for whatever business objective we have. And I mean, maybe this is common sense, but it's always good to repeat to yourself that I can't boil the ocean, I can't do all the things, and that if I can continue to make forward progress and in a demonstrable way, like I'm doing the right things for myself, my business, and eventually we'll have success. So just a couple things. All of that data that you saw me use today to make some points about what's going on in your landscape is a part of the platform that we have. If you're interested in kind of analyzing it for yourself, we definitely can get you access to that exact data set. We have a free trial. Come to our website. It's great. If you would like to read that benchmarking study that looks at engagement on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter for a number of different industries for all of last year, Andrew will pop a link to that study I think there's a chat thing going on over here. And in that way, you'll be able to kind of read that for yourself. Also, I think there's a recording of this session, and if the slides are useful, we can make that too. So yeah, thank you for your attention. And I think we have saved some time for Q&A. So I'll let Andrew jump back on here, and we can see what we want to talk about now.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, man. This is, it's exactly what I expected. Last year was awesome. This year was awesome. So thank you for putting this together and for the time to put this on. So everyone, if you have questions, you can put those in the chat, or you can tweet them to us using hashtag #BankOnSocial. And while we're waiting for those questions, I have some questions for you. Some of them are technical, but before I get to those, I want to kind of put you on the spot here and see if we can sort of meet a lot of bankers where they are right now. So let's imagine, let's get hypothetical. You and I have just started at a credit union, and they have a Facebook page, they have a Twitter page. Historically, they have not been consistent with posting, and when they do post, their organic reach is pretty bad. It has been neglected. What would you start doing to turn that around?
Again, and I had them in this order for a reason, but you've got to establish the consistency that you can achieve, right? Like if you can only post once a week, that's better than nothing. But before that, I talked about having your page. Like if you have a Facebook page, like if you've chosen to hang your shingle on Facebook, which is a good decision, your customers are there, then you should at least make sure that all of the basic details are in order. Is your address right? Is your phone number right? And then take the customer service impact, because so many folks do go to social media for customer service reasons. My wife asked, like, if I only ever tweet at brands because I'm irritated, for example, I'm irritated because you lost my bag. I'm irritated because whatever. Like, does it look bad? And no, my own personal experience, and I think that of many people, go ask Jay Baer, like he wrote a whole book about customer service and customer service on social media, is it feels like a really direct, actionable way to get a hold of a brand and to get a hold of a real person who's going to give you an answer. If you hang that page up You put your shingle out. You better be prepared to have someone paying attention to that. And I don't mean full social media listening for any, no, like if they've come to your page to write a review, thank them. If they've come to your page to write a wall post, sharing a positive experience, great. Again, reshare that post. That post could become content for you, whatever. Acknowledge it. If you do these things consistently, even if you almost never post, at least when people come to your page, they will see fresh dates. They will see that you respond quickly to all customer service requests, again, whether it's via Messenger or wall post or whatever else. And that is a sign that you care, that you're real, and that you know what you're doing. And again, whether it's Facebook or not, like that's my basics. And so if you're gonna hang it up, how many pages, companies do I look at where the imagery and the branding that I see on the website is different than the imagery and branding look and feel that I see on their Facebook banners 6 years old, and the icon that they've got their avatar is different from their Twitter avatar, is different from this stuff matters. Like if someone's going, is this the same bank? Right? Like I get to Facebook and go like, is this what I meant to have? That's a problem. So those are the basics, but those are the most, like forget about posting. Those are the most important basics. Again, if you're going to hang out on Twitter, whether or not you're going to post a lot, making sure that you're paying attention to your notifications, that you're listening, that the profile is set up, feels consistent with your branding. I noticed from like last year to this year, I used Berkshire Bank twice, and like they completely updated all their branding and they modernized. It looked kind of dated before, and this year they went with this big X, and I don't know, like it looked a lot nicer, and they pretty consistently applied that across the board. And like that's good. That's what you should be doing. But yeah, if you can only afford to post twice a week because it's burdensome to create content, then great, but set that bar and then meet that bar. Mm-hmm. Finding quick ways to make content that is shareable is a great way. And this just is where it gets into the creativity that you need to be. I mean, I don't care if you're in digital marketing, social media marketing, content marketing generally, part of your job is understanding what kinds of topics, what kinds of campaigns are going to resonate and that you can afford to produce. America First does some crazy, like a lot of video and a lot of native video and a lot of highly produced native video. I know a lot of you are like one person who's doing 3 jobs. I was that person. Like I didn't have time to go have a real camera and I don't even know how to do that. Like how would I do that? But if you keep hearing, oh, have to be doing video, then you need to start thinking like, well, what other kinds of video native am I seeing on Facebook where I could get it done? Tools like Animoto. This is a great tool. I don't know how many of you have heard of this tool, Animoto, but it is really simple web-based video creation, which is more like moving images with overlay text, and they've got built-in soundtrack, and there's a little of stock, and it's really easy for anyone with an iPhone or an Android to like make some native video that's actually pretty decent, fast. That's what you need, like good enough and fast. Because now you can start to, for example, post more, say, native video and end up getting more reach, elevating the visibility of your brand on the platform. So a small anecdote. We used to post lots of links on our Facebook page. We have, I don't know, a couple thousand Facebook fans. We were getting like 50 impressions on our link posts, literally like 50. Nothing. Like no one's seeing it. It's like, why are you bothering?
Yeah.
Then we started doing a bunch of native video. We did a campaign, it was like last December maybe, where we did a native video every day. And it was one of our staff members sharing a social media tip that they'd learned along the way. Like just them in the office. It was like pretty low production value. We did that every day. The first one got maybe 100 impressions. But you know what? By the 3rd day, it got like 200 impressions. And by the 7th day, it got 400 impressions. And by the end of the campaign, we were maybe at 800 or 900. So like 800 or 900 per post. We went from 50 or 100 to 800 or 900. But here's the cool thing. We stopped doing the videos in January. We continued to get more and more reach on our photos. And like once or twice when we shared a video, we got up to like 1,200, 1,300, 1,400. Some dramatic increase. And then we didn't post any more native videos for like 6 weeks. Slowly but surely, our photos and our links. Oh, by the way, in that whole process, our links went from 50 to 200 or 300. So we like went 5-6x. Then, as we stopped posting native video, it leaked back down, and we were, by April we were back into 50s. You're like, oh, The mix is like, I talk about the mix from media type perspective because it matters, because
Yeah.
Facebook cares, and they don't want to drive you off site. So if you just link, you're not going to get there. But you have to find the balance for you. And if you can only afford to do 2 posts a week, maybe consider like, how could I make one of them a good enough native video? How could I think about the contest idea? Like, it doesn't cost a lot of money to do a $50 gift card giveaway. It costs more in your social media manager's time to do that than it does the $50.
Yeah.
But if you can drive reach, good.
You said a couple things in there that really kind of made me think of follow-up questions. And one of the first ones that I thought about is, switching to this kind of inbound or content marketing model does take time, right? And it takes sort of commitment to the strategy and being consistent, like you keep mentioning. You saw some pretty rapid changes when you started to incorporate native video. In general, how long does it take to begin to see if a test is going in the right direction, or if it's not really having an impact and you need to make some revisions? Have you seen anything about that kind of in your data?
Yes. So what I can tell you is, from a purely like post type perspective, like links, photos, even a photo where the body copy is like, let's say we do this. Like we write a lot of like industry guides, right? Like we did a craft beer one recently where we analyzed like 100 craft breweries. We could have made it a link to go to this landing page and download it. But if you share a photo that has the text over it that says like craft beer, blah, blah, whatever, and then the body copy is like, we analyzed 100 craft breweries, here's what we learned. And then it's kind of like the link gets inlined in the copy. Mm-hmm. Versus, and we've tested, right? Like make it a link post, make it whatever. About the same amount of people click the link either way, but I'm probably get 4 or 5 or more X reach on the photo version of it, right? So people see it. I'm getting it in front of a lot more folks. And if you got to look at clicks, right? Like if you're not getting the clicks, is that call to action thing? Is that, here's a mistake I see all the time. You put this big like body copy in your Facebook post, and then people put the link at the end. Fine, except for on mobile, it only shows the first 4 or 5 lines, and you have to tap read more to get to the point that there even is a link.
Right.
So if you're reducing friction and trying to drive people off site, which is, again, an okay thing to do sometimes, like, can you at least do it the best you can? You got to look at the bet. Like, we'll look at people who are really good at this stuff. Like, go look at Buffer or some folks like this. Like, monitor some of the social media companies that do this for a living. Mm-hmm. Learn the tricks. You start to see. But when we started posting these native videos every day, with every video, the organic reach went up. So like 7 posts in, 7 days later, I could show you 100, 125, 175, 2.25, 250, every single one. And then it really, at some point, really accelerated. And then when we kind of plotted it out with our photos, we noticed we weren't posting any photos, but I mean, we were like, once a week or twice a week. Those were coming up too. And then our links were coming up, and you're like, wait, the native video is dragging everything up with it. Like, oh, yeah, going on here. We reached peak peak organic reach for our audience 3 weeks into this strategy. It didn't take a long time, but it did take consistent activity for a few weeks to see this. But with the hindsight of watching the entire thing kind of up and down unfold, yeah, like it was really clear that 3 days in, something was happening. And this is like the beauty of Facebook is, look, here's a secret. You could post a lot more than once a day. Like the algorithm is going to keep people from being inundated with your content, particularly if it's not good or it's never resonated. Like do an experiment for yourself. Go find something that you think you vaguely like that you wouldn't bother seeing more. Like at some point I did this with like Red Bull. I don't like Red Bull. It's gross, but they do a ton of action sports stuff, right? I liked Red Bull. And the first couple days, like I got a few posts, and then like a few posts a day. And then then I was seeing like maybe one a day. Then I liked one, and then I liked another one. And then and all of a sudden you start getting 2 a day, 3 a day. Now I can't make Red Bull go away. Like as people engage with your content, Facebook figures out who wants what. So go ahead and do a little testing, like twice in a day, like the same content, the same call to action, the same campaign. Do it differently. Do it as a photo. Do it as a link. Do it as a native, whatever. Square them off. See how it goes. We test things like caption video, don't caption video. Like, you should caption your video. Like people watch with the sound off. Like, go look at people like love him or hate him, like a Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Like, man knows what he's doing. Everything's captioned. No one watches it with sound unless you want to hear him get irritated and yell at you about why, Monday morning is such an important thing you should seize. But like, it's all captioned. It's captioned for a reason. The platform, yeah. So this is all tiny stuff, but it adds up to big differences in terms of how you execute.
Yeah, especially when you are being consistent with those. And there is like a momentum kind of game to these social media platforms. It's like it'll gradually trend, but then everything around it will benefit if it's moving in the right direction. And unfortunately, the opposite is also true, where it's like if things are moving in the wrong direction, you'll have content that brings everything down or stunts your reach. So that always makes it kind of a weird environment for testing, but it's the only way out of that place, right? Is you have to test and figure out how you trend out of it.
Yeah. As digital marketers, like if you're not testing, you're not doing as well as you could be. And to the extent that you're spending not only your time, which is the most expensive thing we have in a business, but additional like program dollars. Like we do a lot of Facebook advertising, for example. If you're not testing, you're throwing money away. We did a webinar, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 months ago, where it was one of the first webinars we'd ever tried to do ads for. And we were getting webinar signups, and it was costing us maybe $20 a pop to get a webinar signup. I see somebody asked a question about how we measure data and conversion. Like we put the pixel in all the pages and we fire it back into Facebook. We want to know like what ads, what copy. And it turned out that from a call to action perspective, so we had this graphic, right? It was a big graphic and it said in little letters, like learn to justify social media or something like that. I think that was roughly the topic of the webinar. And in big letters, it said live webinar. And the click-through rate was sad. And our demand gen manager, who's also our designer and a bunch of other amazing things, she like switched the copy. And she was like live webinar was this tiny thing. And it was like justify your social media, really big. 4x improvement in the click-through rate. And the conversions weren't quite as good at the bottom. I mean, they were good, but they didn't come up 4x. We went from paying $20 a pop to like $8 with that one change. And she ran them side by side. And then Facebook sees when you're running them side by side that one of them is doing better, and then they serve all the traffic to that. And then she was like, oh, my targeting's a little off. People from, it was like, I don't remember exactly what it was. People from the Midwest weren't signing up or something like that. And she's like, forget it. What if I just put all my budget to the coasts? And she made that change. And then it went from $8 to $4. And so in 2 changes, we went from $20 a pop to $4 a pop. Yeah. We know where our business sells. We know where our business doesn't sell. Like we should use that information to do our targeting, et cetera. But it's all testing, and you're always testing. We do this for blog copy. We do this for how we execute on social. Like anything you can do a series of, email nurture, like doesn't matter. We got A/B tests going on everything because we've chosen tools that make that easy, and we understand that we're probably flushing money down the toilet if we're not. And so I just consider testing as a part of like something we should all be doing all the time. But that's also just organizational. Like we have the flexibility and the culture that says that that's really important. And I understand for a lot of you that might be a challenge to either get that extra budget or time or tool set that has that capability. And so show them my webinar and then say like, that guy's got a PhD. He says to do testing.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, right?
He's also got 3 kids and he's sleep deprived. So maybe you shouldn't trust anything he says, but do your best. Yeah.
So looking at this question that did come in, you spoke to it a little bit. You have your Facebook pixel deployed and you're measuring the conversions there. So Shibu asks, how do you measure your call to action? For example, if you're looking to get people to buy your product, how are you using the Facebook data and conversion? Any tips? So I guess there's 2 things in there. It's one, actually tracking the conversions, but then also how are you looking at what your call to actions are, which I guess is a question you could say, how are you using data to evaluate any type of creative?
Right. And if you think about Facebook ads particularly, you've got 2 places to work with. You've got targeting and you've got your creative. And certainly, like I talked to somebody the other day who's like, we sell like an electrolyte replenishment drink. And the genesis of the product was from what did he call it? It was like bullet and line set, like hunting and fishing. And so that was the demographic of like who really resonates. So that was their audience. But as they started testing and expanding, they realized that yoga moms were also like, so talk about a very different 2 target audiences that are extraordinarily different in terms of what they might like to see in their Facebook feed. You can't serve like duck boats and blinds to yoga moms. I mean, maybe to the right, to the overlap you can, but probably not going to work. I have another friend who runs ads through an agency for like a trampoline park or something like that. And the ads they target to the 14 to 17-year-olds on Instagram are very different than the ads they target to the dads on Friday night that pitch the bar that's there. They can watch their kids jump and talk about an easy Saturday morning. But for the kids, it's like all about going to the trampoline park, like knowing your audience, testing the creative. Like, look at us. We changed 2 words, 2 lines like of copy. Like, nobody cares about the words live webinar. Like, we get inundated with this crap. But oh my gosh, my boss keeps asking me why I'm even bothering with social media. Like, oh, justify my, like, that really resonated. You've got to understand that matters. And then who's it going to? And is that the match of those things also incredibly important? Sidebar ads work for some things. Mobile feed placement works for some things. A lot of our customers are social media managers. They live on a desktop all day. Some of our sort of activation experiences or some of our content downloads are great on mobile. And some of them, totally not good on mobile. Like, we should not be, if we know that our call to action is going to take you to something that's not that great on a mobile device, we shouldn't run that placement there.
Yeah.
Like, Audience Network does nothing for us. I'm not looking for 50,000 brand impressions at the bottom of some free app that you got through the iTunes store. Like, we just have never seen any results from that. But I know because we tried. So now we just don't do it. And maybe one day we'll do it again. But as Facebook continues to roll out more and more placements, you can have instant article, kind of mid-tier placements now. You can have video, like suggested video placement. You can, if these are what you do, like, you should try all these things. Like, if you're doing Facebook ads, you should have enough budget, or a portion enough of your budget, to be able to understand how can I get the most for my dollar? But back to the, Shiva's question was like, how do I measure this? You've got to make sure that you've got that Facebook pixel in place on every, like, we've got a landing page system. It's there. We've got our app. It's there. We've got it on our marketing site. It's there. It helps us create custom audiences. People who've been to this blog post and this blog post, and we've synced our customer list. Like, we don't want to, if you've read 9 articles about Instagram and Instagram analytics, like, I might want to hit you with a really high funnel ad that is going to let you get a free piece of content about how to do better Instagram marketing. I probably don't want to offer you a trial. You might even know that I'm selling something, right?
Yeah.
So I've got to understand where you are in the funnel, use that pixel to both understand where you've been and where I want you to go next, and track the conversion. So somebody downloads a piece of content from our site, like, Facebook knows. You sign up for a trial, Facebook knows. We've kind of got like longer sales cycles. So it's hard for us to measure kind of purchase necessarily in the kind of conversion attribution windows of Facebook. But a lot of businesses don't, right? Like, a lot of business, like you, or whatever, you're trying to get a donation, you're trying to make something, sign up for a new kind of this or that or whatever, new kind of account, new kind of a checking account, whatever. Yep. Those things are all immediately measurable, but you've got to wire the data back to Facebook to really let them optimize things for you. And we create custom conversion types. Facebook has a bunch of built-in conversion types in terms of, a lot of it's driven toward e-commerce, things like, added to a cart, checkout process, et cetera. But you can create all the custom ones you want. And we definitely have things like content download, trial sign up, et cetera, that we're trying to drive through all of this activity. And, if I mean, we're kind of talking about Facebook ads now for a second, but the principles are the same everywhere. But if you are doing any ads at all, and you're not reading content from people like John Loomer, who's really thinks really a lot about these sorts of things, like, go to John Loomer's page and watch what happens to you on Facebook. Seriously, like, watch what happens to you on Facebook. You will start at the top of his funnel. Then he starts meta marketing to you. He's like, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing to you right now. Like, that's his marketing. It's awesome. Like, go do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like those billboards that say, do billboards work? They just did. But John Loomer does have a little bit of that going on. And I mean, the guy's smart. He knows Facebook ads for sure.
He knows what he's talking about. Like, go learn from the best, and get it done to you. And then you realize, like, oh, that was really smart. Like, we've done this. Like, I'm saying to do it because I've done this. And like, we've improved some of our processes, or we learned about things that you could do that we thought you couldn't do, or whatever. Continuous experimentation is the key.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite hobbies is putting myself in funnels just to see what happens, right? To see how they market to me and then pick up the lessons from there.
Yeah.
I guess there's probably time for just one last question. And, as we learn from other industries, and you've looked at a ton of data, we're getting to the time of year where a lot of banks are planning. They're trying to figure out, what should they be doing next year? Where should they be putting budget? Have there been any trends you've seen in the data about where you think there's a lot of opportunity that it lies? There's kind of the marketing curve of where things are effective, then there's like mainstream adoption, and then it kind of loses effectiveness or prices start to go up. So where would you say like the gold rush is or the opportunities are? One thing I thought just from looking at your presentation was Instagram had massive growth. Only 50% of the institutions that were there were posting. To me, it seems like being consistent there is a no-brainer, but I was wondering if you've seen anything else.
Certainly just being where everyone is important, but like, let's be honest, lots of brands are on Instagram, and their user base is I don't even know what it is now, 400 million and monthly actives and growing or something like that. And to say like, I've just started here, or I don't have a lot of budget. Like, do you have time to be on Instagram? Do you have time to think about what you should be doing? And then do you have either the skills or the budget to be able to go ahead and execute against some campaign strategy that's going to work for you? Here's the thing about Instagram. It is not a place, like if Facebook doesn't want you to leave the platform, like Instagram has made it almost impossible for you to leave the platform. And scroll through, pick out your phone, keep listening to me, but then go scroll through your Instagram. Like, it's mostly documentation of human life, like people living their experience. So much of what I saw in successful social media posts from community banks was just that community, right? Whether it was their own community, sharing the stories of their employees, sharing the stories of their members, sharing the good and the bad, marketing their own marketing. Like BECU does a lot of, I know just because they're here in town, like does a lot, and they clearly have big budgets, like they have billboards and stuff. So like, not grain of salt, but like, yes, they have budget, but they do lots of community involvement things. Like they sponsor events, big and small. Like that in and of itself is a form of marketing, right? Putting that marketing your marketing on social media is actually something that has a lot of effectiveness. Whether we're talking about banks or we're talking about maybe some of you know the makeup brand like Glossier, like a direct to consumer, started from a fashion blog and turned into this big makeup company. And they do lots of marketing that has nothing to do with social media, right? Like they stand at the New York subway and they give away roses, or they buy little billboards for the turnstiles in the metro or whatever. You better believe that then they go like take pictures of all the stuff they did and take little videos of people getting their roses and being so amazed. Like, and then that becomes their social media content. Like they're just end up marketing their marketing. Or if, like Everlane, like the men's, again, another direct to consumer, like men's clothing, like grew up on social media. They have beautiful offices and like they're documenting what it is to be at Everlane. And that's clearly like a strategy they've come up with of how to be on Instagram, for example. Take HubSpot, like, a lot of us are probably familiar with HubSpot. Like their Instagram is like 75% showing off their office and their team doing fun stuff. You know why? Because your future employees are going to look at your Instagram and go like, do I want to work there? Yeah, it's important. That's a strategy. Then they spend maybe a quarter of the time putting up like social media factoid stuff. It feels very non-Instagram. You have to make that choice for your brand. Like, do you want to do that stuff or not? Some B2B Instagrams, all that. And you're like, why would you follow that? It's not that, unless you're learning something every time, it's just not that, it's not what I want to see on Instagram. Like, so you've just got to be like being there. Do you have the time to be there? Do you have the skill set from a, production, imagery, whatever perspective? And then like, do you feel like you can execute at a high level with the consistency that you need? And then Instagram algorithm is really long. Like, have you guys noticed you end up with like week old content on Instagram sometimes? If it was something that really resonated in your network, I sometimes like don't like that, but that's how it works if you can take advantage of that. So we try to mostly document our kind of corporate life here, like our employees doing fun things. We don't always do that, but it's a heavy piece of what we do. And so, community is such a big part of, again, this kind of smaller banking institutions, like seems like a really good alignment. I looked last year only 50% of the brands or the banks we studied for this webinar last year were on Instagram. This year, also 50%. So now's the time, maybe. I don't know. Like, I'd love to do this again with you next year and see 60, 75, whatever, that more folks are jumping into there, because your future customers, I mean, everyone has banking, right? Like, we've all had banking, but tell you what, the banking I had in college was like what I could barely get, versus now I feel like I have a lot of choice, a lot of opinions, and like, marketing matters a lot, for sure.
Absolutely. We'll take that challenge. We'll definitely see if we can change things around for next year, and we'll have you back. But I just want to thank you so much again for your time today. If people want to learn more about you, or they want to learn more about Rival IQ, what are some good next steps for them?
Certainly just rivaliq.com is a great place to, if you want to learn more about our product, but go to our resources section. We have a lot of white papers, case studies, how-to guides, things that can give you ideas or teach you ideas about how to improve a lot of your social media and digital marketing. Generally, our blog is always a good resource as well. And again, if you want to dig into the data that we looked at, like, you come sign up for a trial of Rival IQ, we let you analyze 4 or 5 companies. Like, engage with us. We can get you access to this full, like, 30, 40, however many companies, and like, we'll make that a part of your trial experience, and really let you get in there and analyze and add more banks, add your particular local set, whatever it is. Like, our success managers, our sales folks are very adept at kind of helping you get the view you need to get. And if it's something for you, cool, come give me some money. But if it's not, like, I think you'll still learn something in the process, and it really will cost you nothing but a little bit of your time.
Cool. Well, thank you again. And thank you, everyone who joined in and asked questions. I appreciate everyone's time. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Seth, thank you so much. And I look forward to talking to you again, hopefully next year.
Great. Thank you, Andrew.
Bye, everyone.